Sorry, it should have been done by you, shouldn't it? Well, sorry, I won't do that next time. And then, am I clicking on something at that point, or?
You should be live in like now.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I see it now. Okay. Hey everyone, here I am with Juan Paulo Revelo, sorry, who's the Chief Solutions Architect at the Office of the President and the Government of Uruguay. So a little bit of his background, he's the Chief Solutions Architect at the Uruguayan eGov and Information Society Agency. Background of computer engineer specializing in information systems and data management technology. He joined the Uruguayan Office of the President 8 years ago and has occupied different roles as AGESIC's Chief Solutions Architect. He leads a team of IT architects who are responsible for the enterprise architecture of the Uruguayan e-government platform. And they've developed and integrated an e-government architecture framework and work towards its evolution and adoption. So I present you. Thank you very much for attending, Juan. And please present your topic, enterprise architecture in the digital transformation of the Uruguayan. Thank you.
Okay, hello for everyone. Thanks, Sean, for the introduction and the opportunity to share our experience working with the enterprise architecture in the digital transformation of the Uruguayan government. I'm very glad to be here with you today. Today, I'm going to talk about how does the country set the main lines of work in order to advance in the digital transformation, and how do we work with the enterprise architecture, and in particular with a framework that we have developed for achieve these goals. In first place, I want to introduce the agenda Uruguay Digital. The agenda integrates the different priority initiatives of the country in order to advance in the digital transformation. This agenda is built with the effort of diverse stakeholders, including public and private sector, the academia, and the organized civil society. The agenda is set in a framework of a 5-year country commitment, which is the government term here in Uruguay. We are currently in the 5th edition of the agenda. But our work started the last government term. We were in the 4th edition of the agenda that was named Transforming with Equity. This agenda had 4 key pillars that were social policy and inclusion, using digital technologies to transform opportunity structures. A second pillar that was sustainable economic development for building a competitive digital economy. Then the pillar about government management that focused on innovating in the relationship between citizens and the state. And the last one that was governance for the information society, an enabling framework to favor its social take-up. This agenda had near of 9 objectives and more than 40 commitments and goals. Each pillar have a set of objectives, and each objective has a group of commitments and goals. One of the main goals that were entrusted to the agency was to achieve 100% of availability of the central administration formalities, so that this can be all initiated, tracked, and completed online. And this was a really challenging goal for us, because the reality in that time was quite different. When we start, or in that moment, we didn't even know how many public services we had in the government, but we knew that only a few of them were available online. So as in many South American countries or Latin American countries, in Uruguay, each public organizations have really different maturity levels and knowledge about the use of the IT, and really different and diverse capability and skills. But however, On the other hand, we identify really similar needs and problems that have to be solved. So we become convinced that to carry out this initiative efficiently and optimally was necessary to have a different approach than digitize one by one the public services. It was necessary to form patterns by category and share assets. So we set general objectives that were we needed to have an integrated vision of the public services in the government. We need to order the cows that were the public services at that moment. And we need to find a common language to use between the IT and the business, and to use between the public and public organizations. And obviously, we want to promote an efficient use of IT resources, which is one of the aims of the agency. At the same time, we were studying and researching some enterprise architecture frameworks, and we found the TOGAF standard. The TOGAF standard provides us with the architecture development method, an organized process, and a way to achieve these main goals that we have set. So we built a digital service reference architecture based on the TOGAF standards, which guides the public organizations in the design of the technological infrastructures and applications, and in the use of the information systems in order to guarantee integration and efficient use of the state IT resources in the public service digitalization. This was our first approach to the field of enterprise architecture, and we developed a reference architecture framework for each model of the TOGAF framework, we developed some reference guidelines. Talking about the business domain, we promote that the public organization had to find which was the target for each digital services and must be aligned with the objectives of the organizations. We specify that each process had to be modeled using the standard BPMN2. And talking about the application and data domain, we promote the adoption of the business process model systems and generalize some technical solutions that have to be developed for all the public agencies, like a single sign-on system for all government solutions. This provide or give only one user to authenticate to all public services. We specify how the different public organizations have to integrate with the payment gateways that were available in the market. And we developed a central traceability system that allowed the users to track their digital service. This central traceability system allows us to have more statistics and more knowledge about the behavior of these public services, how many services, and which were the most used public services in the government. We also built a digital service catalog for have a unique place where the citizen can find their requirements and the requisites for initiating that public service. Moving to the technology domain, we already had some suite and technological solutions, like was the interoperability framework. We had a legal framework and a technical solution and interoperability platform that we link and we add for this domain. We already had a private optical fiber network that is called Redui, that connects all the public organizations in the government. And we give, for some public organizations, services of cloud. We give them solution as a software and platform and infrastructure as a service. So we add to the TOGAF standard 2 more domains that were security and performance, because we want to reinforce the use of the digital identity and the digital signature in the public services of the government. and to convince of the importance of the data protection and data privacy from this domain. After the success of the framework of the digital services reference architecture, we realized that we could generalize this architecture framework, and we built the integrated e-government architecture as a TOGAF standard tailoring. This is a generalized of the previous framework that we built, and this framework applied for all the public agencies, and we want this framework be the reference for other public organizations to develop their own enterprise architecture. We also want to apply this general framework to other strategic domains. The content of the framework is, first of all, an architecture vision where we have the general principles and the legal framework adapted to the Uruguayan government. And we develop different reference models for each TOGAF domain, including 2 cross-cutting domains that were security and performance. Each reference model has some directives, recommendations, and guidelines on how the public organization how to work to develop each domain. To clarify a bit the content of this framework, I will pass through the different reference models. In first place, the business reference models. We want to promote that the public organization know the mission and the vision of the public agency that they are working for, and to define and align the strategic objectives with the public organization vision and mission. Then to identify will help to identify the portfolio of projects and the portfolio of products and services that the organization has. And we want to review the organization structure that must be aligned with the strategic objectives and the products and services they are offering. Going to the data reference model, we build this reference model based on the data management body of knowledge that is a book from the DEMA International. In first place, it's a model oriented to the interoperability of the data between the public organizations. And in first place, we set the base component of government data because we want the public organizations classify and categorize the data, because each type of data will be quite different considerations in its management. So we want to public organization classify and identify which was the master data they had, the personal data, and the referential data. Then we add 2 more components that are vocabulary and data quality. Vocabularies that enhance the semantic interoperability between the different public organizations. We promote that the public agencies develop their own vocabulary for their own master data and reuse the vocabularies that are already defined for the whole government. With the component of data quality, we link here another initiative that the agency already had that was a framework for data quality. The framework guides the public organization in how to measure and how to work with data quality and help them to define the different dimensions and metrics of the data quality. The interoperability component here is basically for use the interoperability framework that we had already defined, and to use the interoperability platform that the agency gives to the public organizations to exchange the non-personal data between them. Then we add 2 more components that are data analytics, because we want to enhance and promote a data-driven public government, and so we want that the public organizations made analytics and made analysis from the data. And the other component was to link another initiative of the agency, that is the Open Government Initiative. So we link here the open data to set and to combine the principle about the open by default. We also have 3 more components that are vertical components, because we think that apply for all the reference model, that are the principles, that the principles are associated with the data lifecycle, and the governance and security and privacy about the data. Going for the applications reference model in the applications domain, we help the public organizations to plan and management the development of several types of applications, give recommendations in the design of these applications, and give some reference architecture that then are linked with our repository as our architecture building blocks. But especially we link here another initiative of the agency that was a software quality framework. This framework is a tool designed to guide institutions into the continuous improvement. The model here is generic, so it can be applied to different realities with different technologies or programming language, taking into account the particularities of the Uruguayan state agencies. Talking about the technology reference model, we focus here in the first factor that support the physical and logical data and applications. We help the public organizations to identify some quality attributes and non-functional requirements that have to apply for several products and applications, and give some guides for the documentation of modeling about the hardware elements and how to manage the infrastructure and the base software. About these new domains that were to the framework, we already had in the agency another initiative, another framework that was the cybersecurity framework, that provides an homogeneous approach to reduce the risk linked to cyber threats. So we think that it was really important to link here this framework to take into consideration in the development of the enterprise architecture for public organizations. And in the performance domain, we promote the measurement of the results and the performance for the different domains. So we link a measurement model for each reference model. About the continuous deployment, we work to improve the process of construction of the reference architectures. We want to receive feedback about the repository, the framework itself, and the different interoperability reference architecture that we define. We work on architecture evolution cycles, and we have created an architecture community for public organizations. In this community, we work and we discuss with other public institutions in how they can make the first steps, or how we can improve the general framework to apply to another strategic domains. In the repository, we had in first place the Knowledge Center. That the Knowledge Center is a public site where we document and share all enterprise work. And the building blocks. In the building blocks, we add a new concept of building blocks that is the data building blocks. I will link here the definition of the outputs of the data reference model, that are the vocabularies and the metadata, the referential data, and as I said before, the open data. We had an open data catalog for in the agency, and we link here for the building blocks. Talking about the architecture building blocks and the solution building blocks, we say here, we store here the different reference interoperability architectures. and we give for public organizations some architecture patterns and reference architecture to develop different kind of systems. In the solution building blocks, we link to another initiative of the agency that is public software. The agency has a public software repository on GitHub, and we link here all the solutions that are available in this repository. And of course, we list all the solutions that the agency give as a service for the public institutions. This is a print screen of our knowledge center that is like a wiki where we share our work with the other public institutions and discuss about the content of this wiki. Okay, here we have a complete vision of our framework. On the left side, we have the general framework of the integrated government architecture with each reference model for each domain, or for each TOGAF domain, including the security and performance domain, the continuous development, and the repository, where we have, as I say, the different building blocks. And on the right side, we have the interoperability reference architectures. That is why, like we call this reference architecture for strategic domains. The first reference architecture we built was the digital service. And in the bottom of the image, you can see the different public organizations architecture that will promote that they build their own enterprise architecture based on the general framework of the government architecture. But the goal about the public services, it was not the only goal that we had in the last edition of the agenda. We had another goal that was entrusted to the agency, that was to achieve the adoption of the National Electronic Health Records by 100% of the comprehensive healthcare providers in at least 3 areas. And the agency was working on this goal and created a specific area to work for this initiative. So we decided to apply the same general framework and develop a new interoperability reference architecture for the e-health domain. We need to have a complete vision of the e-health ecosystem, because this includes not only public institutions, it includes public and private institutions. We want to have in the same place an unified view of the legal framework that applies for this domain. And we had to establish the standards and the guidelines for the health institution in how to connect and to create the health data, and how to connect for the platform that we were building. So we had the need to have a big picture of the national e-health record platform that we had to build. And this reference architecture will help us to say for a hospital or a new health institution in the country to understand how the e-health national record solution works, and to evaluate which things they have to develop to be part of this ecosystem. So here we add the new interoperability reference architecture that was the e-health reference architecture. To have this e-health reference architecture was an advantage in the 2020, when we had to create several solutions and applications for the pandemic, to manage the pandemic. And with this reference architecture and this big picture of the ecosystem, we could quickly connect the new solutions with all hospitals and private institutions through the e-health platform. Another goal related to the geographical information that the agency was working on was deploy the spatial data infrastructure with at least 3 levels of geographical information layers. The agency create another specific area to achieve this goal, and we made a similar approach with the e-health national records. We create a third interoperability reference architecture that which we named geospatial architecture. We need the complete vision again of the geospatial ecosystems, and a crucial and key component was defining the data governance, because the geospatial infrastructure in Uruguay is defined in a second level of government. The departmental government are who name new towns or new streets or change the number of an entire block. So we had to define this process, how the data will be recollected and updated in a central solution. We also had to establish standards and guidelines for the use of this geospatial data and provide some resources and solutions and services for other public institutions to use this geospatial data, the new system that we have created. So this one was the third interoperability reference architecture that we add to the general framework. And this is our state now. But now we have new government strategy goals, because in the last year was launched the 5th edition of the agenda, Uruguay Digital, that was named Resilient Digital Society. This 5th edition of the agenda goes from 2021 to 2025 and includes 5 pillars that are inclusive digital society, competitiveness and innovation in strategic sectors, transparency, efficiency, and regulatory of the public sector, infrastructure, connectivity, and cybersecurity, and the regulatory framework. This 5th pillar is the adoption of the adaptation for the regulatory framework in order to ensure citizen right, accessibility, data protection, privacy, security, between others, regular framework that we have to update. So I will talk about the first 4 pillars, where we identify new approach and new things that we have to achieve. Talking about the inclusive digital society pillar, the main objectives are related to the national strategy for digital citizen. We had to build a new digital participation platform and work on the accessibility in digital environments. We also had some commitments and goals related to the education and to health. In this case, in education, we had to facilitate the access to the educational scholarship through online integration of all national and international offer available in the country. And related to health, we had to enhance the digital adoption of the e-health services that we already have built. In this case, we identify these 2 main objectives that we have to work from the agency. In education, we think that we are going to create a new interoperability reference architecture for this domain, because we want to build a similar platform like we did with the e-health platform to connect the different levels of education in the country. In Uruguay, each level of education has an independent and autonomous institution in charge, so it will be really challenging to standardize definitions, vocabularies, and standardize the way and the process to connect this scholarship. And about the health, we need to update our e-health reference architecture with new products and services, and we had to use the current e-health reference architecture to identify the gap between the target e-health reference architecture and the current one. Moving to the competitiveness and innovation in strategic sectors pillar, the main objectives are related to understand new strategies and to build new strategies for employment, to enhance and simple interaction with the state, including cross-border digital signature and incorporating IoT in public services. We also had to develop digital transformation in the proactive sectors. In this pillar, we identify that we will need to update our digital service reference architecture, including new products and services. And again, base our gap analysis in the current digital service reference architecture to identify the projects and the products that we have to create and to add to the current ecosystem to achieve these goals. In the transparency, efficiency, and regulatory of the public sector pillar, the main objectives are related to the digital enhancement in public organizations and in public innovation. We want to develop proactive services and new products for the citizens, like a digital wallet. We also want to have statistics based on administrative records and virtual census, and we want to develop a digital administrative management. In this case, we want to use the current service architecture again to identify the gap between the target architecture and the current architecture, and this will help us in how to develop these proactive services and how to add this new product and new services that we have to give for the citizens. And on the other hand, we will define a new interoperability reference architecture in the digital administrative management domain, due to the fact that this domain has very specific legal procedures and is needed to define some vocabularies and standards to exchange this information between public organizations. Moving to the last pillar, infrastructure, connectivity, and cybersecurity. The main objectives are related with the global quality connectivity, cybersecurity framework, and a vision of government as a platform. Here, of course, the updated version of the cybersecurity framework reinforce us to update all our reference architecture, including the general reference architecture of the government architecture, and the vision of government as a platform. The main commitments and goals are related to the evolution of our interoperability platform, the inclusion of APIs, and the development of different APIs from public sector to the private sector. We want to connect and start interoperating between public and private institutions through our interoperability platform, and to promote the adoption of the national digital identity and digital signature. In the digital identity, we want to add some EA components that allow the user to authenticate with face recognition, for example. And in the digital signature, we are developing a new platform to include the cross-border digital signature. That is another goal in the agenda. So this is what we are imagining to be our framework in the future. We will have updated versions for each reference model for the e-government architecture itself, new products and services linked to the repository, the updated version of the existing interoperability reference architectures, and new reference architectures one in the education domain, and another one in the administration, digital administration management. And of course, the evolution of the different public organizations architectures. Well, as a conclusion, the main benefits of working with the integrated e-government architecture in the development of the digital transformation of the country is to be able to unify strategic initiatives for the public organizations, to have a complete vision of the strategic domains, that this is really a key concept to develop the different products and services and to achieve the strategic goals, to use a common framework for different business and domains and to the different stakeholders, and to help us to identify the gap between the target architectures and the current architectures and simplify the construction and develop of the different project portfolios. So, well, that's all for now. I open for questions.
Okay, yeah, so for everybody, thank you very much for that, Juan. It was a great presentation, very fulsome. So for people who want to ask questions, there's a button on the right. If you click on that, you can input your question there, and we can have a look at that. There's one question we have so far. Does each of the users have a unique identifier to access all of e-governance services? Did you catch the question?
No, sorry, I'm
okay. I'll just repeat the question.
Yes, please.
Yes, no problem. So for Uruguay, would each user accessing services from the government have a unique identifier to access all of the e-governance services?
Yes, as I say, when we developed the digital service reference architecture, we realized that it was necessary to have a unique identifier for the citizens. So we developed a single sign-on solutions that is called User Gubui, that allow the people, the citizens, to authenticate with all public institutions with the same user. It's also, this solution is integrated with the digital, the smart card that we give to identify the citizen. So we have different levels of authentication with the same solution.
Excellent. Okay, we don't have any other questions at this time. Just checking.
Okay.
But I've got a question for you. I guess sure. You mentioned the use of TOGAF and I assume other international standards and frameworks. How important is it for you and your team to adopt these as opposed to, say, trying to build something from the bottom up?
Yes, I think that based on general frameworks and international standards are really important, because this gives you the responsibility to and the align. If you align to a framework, you probably improve your work, because there are several definitions or methodologies that you can drive on, and this will help you to achieve the goal. So to take the TOGAF framework and adapt to the Uruguayan reality was really a good thing, because it helps another public institutions not to read the entire standard, so they base their work on our work and on our reference architecture, and it helps to really fast develop at least the first steps in the enterprise architecture field. Sorry, Sean, you are mute.
Can you hear me now? I've got one more question. Oh, there's some more questions here. How difficult was it to get the different departments in Uruguay to agree to an integrated e-government architecture?
Yes, great question. It's a bit difficult because in one hand we had that this enterprise architecture and the reference architecture we defined were aligned with the digital agenda that was a country commitment. So in this case, this reference architecture were a bit easy to develop because they feel that we are helping them to achieve the same goals that they are committed to do. But on the other hand, when we develop the general framework and we want to the other public institutions work and develop their own enterprise architecture that they are not aligned with a specific goal or a specific commitment, there we have some problems in the adoption because not all the public institutions are prepared to do this work and have the capability and the skills. So one of the main reasons we develop and we create the architecture community is to have the opportunity, the space to discuss these problems and to guide these public institutions that are interested in develop the enterprise architecture, and we help them to make the first steps.
Excellent, thank you. One more question. I have a question here. It's a bit of a broad question, so maybe here it says, how much has the framework changed programs and services? Or maybe you might give us maybe an example of a way of something that has changed dramatically about programs and services directly from the use of that framework.
Yes, I think that the best example is about the digital services reference architecture because our starting point was really different. We had to digitize the public services, but in this approach, we add the digital identity, digital signature, gateway payments. So we add a lot of value in the chain of the digitalization of the public services that maybe if we don't have this general framework or the general work for the whole government, some public institutions maybe develop payment gateway, but maybe others not, or maybe some digital services were integrated with the single sign-on solutions, and others give a local user with these digital services. So I think the best example is in the digitalization of the public services to have this universal standardization of how the digital service had to be digitalized is the best example.
Excellent. We've got maybe just a few more minutes to go. I just was wondering maybe if you could sort of talk about some of the challenges that you have in Uruguay if there are people who may not have access to digital services, and I guess how that's changing as well.
Okay, yes, I think in this period, this agenda, we had the main challenge for really transforming the digital services, because the last period we digitized the public services, but maybe there are many public services that don't have sense for the citizens. So I think that the citizens now still have to understand how the government works, to understand which public services or which digital services they have to make. So I think the challenge in this period is to really have a digital transformation in the public services and probably delete or integrate more than one digital services to be more focused and user-centric.
And so I guess maintaining the many different channels where citizens can access services is a big thing for you as well. Well, I want to really thank you for giving that presentation. It really was a very fulsome presentation. from an EA perspective. Thanks very much, and very much appreciate your presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity, and have a nice conference.
Thanks very much, and I hope you enjoyed as well. All right, we're just gonna have to stay on for a little bit while we while the system catches up to us. It's a little technical thing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, cheers.